Hey guys, Phil here with another tutorial. This one is unexpectedly quite long. The gist of it was that I was going to do a tutorial about using SQLite in production. But I realized to do SQLite in production, you're really talking about what do you need to do to set up a server. So I've got in the middle of this video a whole thing about setting up a server, and included in the link below, in the description below, is a link to all of the gists I use on GitHub to set up any Ubuntu 22 server for Ruby on Rails, including not just SQLite, but Memcache and using MySQL if you want or whatever. So I've got all of that. So it's in three parts, kind of. The first part is setting up the application, writing the application that uses SQLite, and that's very simple and short. Next large chunk is setting up the Ubuntu server on DigitalOcean. If you want to use DigitalOcean, again, there's a link in the description below to get you a discount. And at the end is how to do things like backing up your SQLite database and all that other good stuff. So strap in, get yourself a coffee, and it's 45 minutes of goodness. I'll see you afterwards. Hi guys, so let's get into it. This is my SQLite in production video. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is we're going to make another Ruby on Rails app. So let's go into my dev, let's go into Rails videos, and let's make, do we have it already? Let's remove that. And let's make a new directory of SQLite demo, and let's go in there. And so let's create a new Rails database. And what am I going to do? I'm going to make a new app in the current folder. And we're going to use SQLite. Of course, that's the default, but I'm just going to be explicit here. Then we're going to do a bunch of crazy stuff just for fun. We're going to set PropShaft as the pipeline, ESBuild as our JavaScript compiler, Tailwind as our CSS, just so it looks crappy out of the box. And we're going to skip JBuilder. We're just going to skip Spring. And while we're at it, why don't we just skip any tests? I'm not here to make a great Rails app. I'm here to show you how to use SQLite in production. So a lot of that's going to be deployment. So off it goes. By the way, as an aside, if you want to have some fun, look at this new framework defaults 7.1. There's some very interesting stuff in there. I might make a video about that. So whatever, it's going to get a bunch of deprecation warnings, which I guess is normal. And then as soon as this is done, I'm going to chuck in some scaffolding just to do, you know, a usual blog post and whatever. But we're not actually going to use any of it, but just for the sake of argument. So let's create a user model, posts model that references the user and has a title and some rich content, or big content, I should say, not rich content, and a comments counter. And then some comments, which also references the user in the post and has a body text. So that's pretty much everything. Then we can do a Rails DB migrate. And let's open this thing in Code Insiders. Go. Look at that. Wonder if I have any other. Nope. Don't save that. So I've got some CSS because honestly, Tailwind out of the box doesn't look like anything. So I'm just gonna quickly style this. So you can do that with the application tailwind.css. You can create some of your own styles. I'm just gonna create a button blue, button hover, And then we'll go to the posts form, I think. Get rid of the user ID, we don't want that. Get rid of the comments count, we don't want that. And submit, create post, and we'll set that class to be the button blue. And why not put a margin top 4 there? And then, I mean, we'd like these forms to look a bit better. So let's go to Tailwind. I'm just gonna yank some stylings here. That one seems fine. So what we can do is create a form input. Oh, look at that. What was I gonna do? Shadow, outline. Yeah, why not? Let's use what they've got. Form input. So we can do class, form input. Let's do that for this one too. And the body, margin X of 6 and a margin top of 4. Just give us some space here. I think that's it. So we can then foreman start with a file of the proc files that they give us. And if we go to localhost port 5000, posts, there's our post, a new post, and there it is. And I've got my thing. I did something wrong there. Yep, that. And let's set a width here. What do they do? That. Okay, so we got a little form. And I guess I could have done on the index, I could have also have done class margin bottom 4 and the class of the button blue. So you can pretty much ignore all the stuff I've done just now. I'm just kind of making it so it doesn't look offensive to my eyes. And then, you know, we could create a post and all that stuff. Not important. What's important is that we have a functioning Rails app that is using SQLite on the background. And if I to create this, I won't be able to create this. Because the user must exist. So rather than doing all that gubbins of logging in and everything like this, I'm going to do this. Okay, so we got a user dot screen name equals Phil, and user dot save. There we go. And then I can just hack it. What's that? Hack it here. So post controller, when we create post params, dot merge user ID equals user dot first dot ID. How's that for a hack? So we're just going to set the user to be the first user. So we've got a post in the database. Post one, show this post. There we go. We have a post. Why don't we also fix the roots to go there to posts index. So then we can just do this. Great. We've got ourselves a little Rails app. So what do we want to do? We want to use, SQLite in production. So that means we need to get this out to a server on the World Wide Web. So what's the first thing we need to do? And you say, Phil, we need to create a server. And you're absolutely right. And we're going to do this with DigitalOcean. That's right. My love affair with AWS is over. So I'm going to create a droplet. We're going to do it in New York. Ubuntu 22, because all of my creation scripts work with 22, not 24. We're going to just do a regular old 2 CPU, 4 gigabyte, whatever. Not the fastest machine in the world, but it's $24 a month, so that's good enough for us. Not going to enable the automatic backup plan. I'm just going to set my SSH key here. Maybe I'll use my personal one. We're going to add the improved metrics. I don't know why that's not set by default. And we're going to call this SQLite demo 01. It's in my project's demo project. And that's going to build us a server. So while we're waiting, what do we need to do from the code side? Well, first, we need this to be into Git. And of course, now when you create a Rails project, it has everything in ready for Git, but it just hasn't added. So we can git add dot and git commit with our comment of initial commit. And what we want to do is put that into a GitHub repository. So let's create a new repository. And why don't we call this SQLite demo? And demo from my YouTube video. Obviously, I've done this before. Demo from my YouTube video about deploying SQLite to production. We're going to be public, and that's it. Create repository, and it gives you some existing things. And we're going to push an existing repository from the command line, because this is an existing repository, right? It's just existing on our local machine only. Oops. And so let's do that command. We're just going to copy and paste the commands from here. So we're going to add a remote origin to associate it with this GitHub repo. We're going to set the main branch to be main, and then we're going to push our main up to origin, and that's it. I can refresh this or just click there. And there, we've got our repo with all of our code. And by the time I've done this, our server's running. So how am I going to deploy? Now, if you've watched this before, this channel before, you know that I love Capistrano. So I'm just going to deploy using Capistrano. But first, we got to prep the server. So let's get down to prepping the server. And we're going to SSH using my personal key, and we're going to go to root at the server. So we're going to log in as root to this new server that we just created. And what I've done is I've created a gist on GitHub that I'll give you guys, of course, in a link in the description. I might actually put my Notion, what do you call it, a Notion page? Anyway, I might put that up, just all of my notes for this thing. But I've got a whole bunch of scripts here that create a fully functioning Rails Ubuntu 22 server. So what we're going to do is just use all of these. So I'm going to first, let's copy, I'm going to copy and paste the first one, because the first one we run as root. So let's vi that. And look at it in raw. We're just going to paste it in. So what does this script do? It creates a user. It's a long way of creating a user with the username of deploy. And it copies the SSH keys from root. So we do the usual thing, user add, and then we do a bunch of stuff to create a dummy password. And then we make our directories if they're not already there. Copy the keys over from root, so I'll be able to SSH in using the same key that I just SSH'd into as root. And then set all the permissions. Make sure that you have to be able to you cannot use a password to log in. You have to use the SSH key. If you want, you can uncomment this to make sure that you can't actually log in as root anymore. That's a good idea, actually. And then finally, I use the Ubuntu firewall to open only SSH, and we make sure that the Ubuntu firewall is on. And then just for fun, we update the server, because sometimes these servers, the image is not so current. I actually think I'm gonna do that. Doesn't matter. Let's run this shell script, and it's gonna go off. And so it's already done everything, and now it's done everything that was in that script, except now it's just doing the update. So this might take a couple of minutes. I might just zip over this in the video. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to just reboot the server and then log in as that new deploy user. So we can change this to deploy. If you want to use DigitalOcean, of course, there's a coupon code in the description of this video that'll get you some credits towards a server. Okay, good to go. So what I'm going to do now is clone all the rest of this of these gists that I've got. So let's git clone this as install scripts ls. So we don't need the create deploy user, we've done that. So let's go down to number 1, which is install rbenv, and that pretty much as it says is going to install rbenv. Now it's going to do 331, and if I'm not mistaken, yeah, we're using 322. So let's quickly edit that file. Now that'll work. So let's run number 1, which is install rbenv. And again, we're now in as the deploy user, right? We're not doing this as root anymore. It's very important. Okay, that's done. So let's go on. What's the next script? The next script is install MySQL and Elasticsearch. Well, we're not going to do that. There's a script here for you if you are using this to set up another server, where you do need that. And then the number 3 is install Nginx, which we do need to do because, of course, we're running this on as a web server. So this script will set up everything you need for Nginx with Passenger as the app server. So that's number 3, right? Yes. Install Nginx. This only takes a minute. Also install certbot in case you want to do SSL certificates, which I strongly recommend. I'm not going to do in this example, but I do strongly recommend it. But we're going to work around that in a minute. So we do have Nginx is now running. So what's the IP of this? So if we grab that, not secure, there, we've got the Nginx page. All good. So that means Nginx is running. So what's the next script we've got? Which is number 4, which is install the other stuff. So we're going to edit this because we don't need the MySQL client, and we don't need this stuff to generate PDFs and to do any image processing. We're not doing any of that in our app. So the only other thing this does is updates Node, I think, because Node is a bit out of date. Yeah, it's 12, so we're going to update to Node 18. You can, of course, set this to be whatever you want and make sure that yarn is installed. So that's script number 4. So let's just edit that. We don't need this line, and we don't need anything from here down, which is the PDF generation and image processing. So we're just going to delete those lines. And let's install the other stuff we need, which won't take more than a couple of seconds. Great. And finally, we're going to prep our app. And this script takes a parameter, and that is your app name. And we're going to use SQLite-demo. You need to remember that because when we do the deploy, I think we need that. But anyway, so our app name is going to be SQLite-demo. So we're going to bash 05, was it? Prep app SQLite-demo. And so that's created a SQLite demo directory for us, which is all we really need. I'm also going to install Memcache and Redis. I don't know that you necessarily need it, but sometimes out of the box, Rails 7.1 action cable and everything on production expects to have a Redis server there. So it's good to have it. It's just going to quit. And of course they're firewalled and everything, so there's not any risk of people getting into it from the outside. So we're good to go. We're going to do the Nginx conf after. Let's get back and do the things we need to do to our app. Like I said, I'm going to use Capistrano. So we're going to close all this. I could have kept that open. Gem file. And in the web development group, or in the development group, we need to have gem Capistrano and gem Capistrano Rails, gem RBenv, and not bundler but passenger, and not bundler but yarn. So let's install all of those gems. Save this and go back to our directory and say bundle. There, got all of our gems. And then we can bundle exec cap install, and that's just going to create some conf files for us that we're going to edit right now. So let's look at, first of all, cap file. We need RBenv, we need passenger, and we need Rails. I don't know why that's not in there. Rails. And I always explicitly set the RBenv type, which is a user type, and make sure that we have Ruby set. I don't necessarily know that you need to do that, but I'm always careful about it. And then we go to the deploy.rb, which is a whole bunch of settings. And our app name, as I said before, we got to make sure it's the same as the one we used in that script. So it's SQLite demo. And we need our repo URL, which is GitHub, my name, and SQLite demo.git. What else do we need to set in here in Capistrano? We need to set the branch, set branch as main, and we need to set the deploy to as home deploy SQLite demo, which is the directory that script created for us. And then the other thing is we need to, I'm going to copy and paste this, set our linked directories. And what that means is Capistrano will create in a directory called shared. It will create a log directory, a temp with a PIDs and temp with a cache, and a vendor JavaScript and a storage. So, and then after we deploy, it'll symbolically link those directories into our app directory. The reason this is so important for us, especially this, is that storage is where your SQLite database is kept. So by making it a linked directory into a shared folder, that means that our database will survive subsequent deploys. Otherwise, we would just replace the storage directory and our database would be lost. And then finally, because of the way we're using ESBuild and all of that, we want to not run deploy assets, backup manifest, and deploy restore manifest because we don't actually have a manifest. And then the final thing we need to do is go into our deploy production and add our server, and then we need the IP, which is you, and that, and then we set the user, which is deploy, and we set our roles, which are, I always say production, app, DB, and web. If you don't have web, it won't restart all the web services and everything like that. And if you don't have DB, it won't run the migrations. And if you don't have app, it won't pretty much do anything. So once we have that set, we're actually done. So we can now, let's just git status, git add dot git status here, git commit -m, and we'll just say added Capistrano. But we do not want to deploy just yet, because there's one very important thing we need to do, because we're not using SSL. And I said, of course, you know, we should be using SSL to do all of this, but we're not. So we're gonna find SSL here, and in the config environments production, there's a line, config.force SSL true. If you have that set, it will automatically redirect any non-secure requests to secure. It's great because it saves you doing something in your nginx conf, but the problem is we're not running SSL. And because the way it does the redirect, I think it does a 302, which is moved permanently, your browser, if you hit it with this set, you'll be redirected to HTTPS, and your browser will never again let you try and go over HTTP, so it's a real pain. So turn this off, unless you're going to do a certificate. Maybe I'll cover that in another time. And the other thing is there's a warning you're going to see, which is that you're using SQLite in production. Are you crazy? That you're going to see a warning like that. So we can turn that off by setting SQLite production warning off. So let's commit those things. Status git add dot git commit -m production settings. And now we can git push origin main. So our latest code is up there. Let's clear our console and cap production deploy might work. Oops, damn it. And it didn't. Oh no, I forgot one thing. You need, on a Mac at least, you need to have your SSH keys in the queue, in the session and added. So you need to do an SSH add, and that lets us get onto our server. And then we need to do an SSH add. The key that we're using to log in. Now we should be able to do cap production deploy. All right, we're back. You guys are gonna laugh here. Just wasted God knows how long. Where is it? Deploy. I have a typo. GitHub. You guys probably saw it. You don't know how many minutes I wasted and I had to cut out. Anyway, let's cat production deploy. Gonna go off. Do all this stuff. There we go. It's gonna pull down the source. See, it's creating those shared directories that I talked about. Pulling it down. Creating a release directory with today's date and time. Make sure that everything's in there. Remove anything that might be there already. Gonna run bundler, so this might take a minute for the first time. Good. Okay, that's interesting. Missing secret key base. So if we go and look at our SQLite demo directory, one of the things that it created was this file of RBN vars. And you know, if you ever use .env rails in your development environment, you need to know where to put those environment variables on your server. Well, you put them here. And that's inside of your app directory, but above your releases and things like this. Because RBN will look at the chain. So if it finds an RBN file, vars file, it will use that as your environment variables. So I'm going to kind of do something bad and insecure because I just want to get this released. I'm going to find my master key, which is there. And I'm going to put in, is it secret key? I can never remember with this, secret key base or master key. It's one of those two, so I'll put them both in. So this will be now in your environment. And then we'll be able to do the deploy. It's just because it can't read our credentials. So let's quickly go off. It's done the bundler already, I think. So I think we should be fine as far as speed goes. Alright, so we're over that, and we're doing the assets precompile. Bundler is all working. We're ready to go. And it's going to do a DB migrate. It's migrated the database. So we now have a database on our machine, restarting everything, and there we go. So if I go to the server, now I put in a bunch of aliases, so now you can just type console from anywhere, and it'll actually load up your Rails app. So we can see if it's working. User first. We don't have any. So let's make that user like I did before, just so things work. New and a screen name of test user. And user save. Great. So we've got a user. So our database is working. So what's the last thing we need to do? The last thing we need to do is set up our Nginx conf. So let's take a look at this. And as it says, it goes in this area. So we're going to sudo vi, and we're going to call this SQLite demo. And we can just copy all of this. And it's going to just take any request coming in on the server on route 80. And then we need to find anything that's my app. We're good to go. That I just changed all the directory names. This is a pretty complex Nginx conf. We'll do even system maintenance for you. So this is what pretty much I use in production for my real life servers. And the only thing, of course, is that it normally would be using SSL. So we can sudo rm etc nginx sites enabled default, get rid of that. We can sudo ls -n etc nginx sites available SQLite demo can go into, this is how you make it actually work, enabled. Oh, God almighty, hopeless. It's ln -s, and now sudo nginx -t, everything looks good. So we can sudo system control, I'm going to get this wrong, control restart nginx, and we can say all logs. All right, everything should be running. So let's try this. Oh my gosh, there it is, it's working. So we've got a new post. Testing. This is content. So there we go. We're on production using SQLite. Here it is. Everything is good and running. So now, sorry this is a bit of a long video. Let's quickly do some kind of advanced stuff. And there's two things I want to talk about. First of all is something called Active Record Enhanced SQLite Adapter by Stefan Markheim, and this will give you things like true foreign keys, virtual columns, and things like that, and some enhanced tuning. So if you're really using SQLite in production, you should take a look at this. But The most important thing is, SQLite is running on your machine, and that's it. If you lose your machine or anything like that, you lose your database. So what I want to do now is quickly walk you through how to back up your database. And the way we can do this is, we can use SQLite, SQLite demo, shared, storage, production. That will open our database, right? So we've used our database there. But SQLite has a built-in thing that does a dump, which is like a PG dump or a MySQL dump. And that outputs, as you can see, everything to create the table and insert the values. It's a full dump of your database. And because SQLite is so fast, we can use this to essentially create backups. So if we do that dump command and then pipe it over to gzip and then output that as, my database.dump.gz, we now have a file here that's a backup of our database, and we could decompress that and pull it back into SQLite and restore our database. So that's all well and fine, but that means your backup is still on your machine. So why don't we copy that into some cloud storage? And again, I'm going to use DigitalOcean. I'm going to use DigitalOcean Spaces. So what we want to do, and we connect to DigitalOcean Spaces using this command line tool called S3 command, because it was written to connect S3, but DigitalOcean Spaces are S3 compatible. So while that's installing, let's just go over to DigitalOcean and create some API keys. So let's create a new key, SQLite demo. And okay, it's created the key. So let's go back and do an S3 command configure. Just going to zoom this up a little bit, make it a bit easier to see. So the access key, we need this access key. And the secret key is this secret key that we only see one time. Default region US. Now we need to set our space. So we're going to use New York City 3. That's where our server is. So it's New York City 3 DigitalOceanspaces.com. And we need to set the bucket template, which is that. And we're not going to use an encryption password. We're going to use HTTPS, and we're going to test it. Everything works. Success. Your access key and secret key worked fine. Save my settings. Yes, indeed. So now we could do an S3 command ls, which will show you all my other buckets that I've got. But what we can do is an S3 command mb make bucket, and let's create a SQLite demo backups. Okay. And it's going to go off and create a bucket for us. So now if we look, remember we have this file. And this is all we need to do. S3 command put my database dump into the bucket. That's it. How about if I put the word put? How can I misspell the word put? Done. And now if we S3 command ls just this space, Did I do something wrong there? There's our file. So we can write a cron job. What I'm not going to do that here, but what I recommend is you create a cron job that every day, every hour, I don't care, does that dump command. This one dumps it into a file, and then you put that file into your bucket using that cron command. So you'd write a little script that first does the dump, then does the S3 command copy. And there you go. That is your SQLite database backed up, nice and secure, and you can restore it quite easily from that same bucket. If you want to be really sophisticated, you could use something called LightStream, which instead of doing a dump every few minutes, will actually constantly stream the data from your SQLite into a backup. If you're doing something that's pretty vital and changes a lot, then that's a recommended way to go. So there we go. Rather long video where I walked you through creating the application, configuring a server on DigitalOcean, and how to even to do backups of your SQLite database. I strongly encourage you to use SQLite if you can. It's surprisingly fast, and it's great for small projects or things that aren't updated very often. I mean, if you're writing a blog app for some reason in Rails, use SQLite. If you're using these small kind of micro apps, use SQLite. That's all for me. See you next time.